Item 12 on our agenda, for which you will need GS 2010A and GS 2070B. A couple of words about the way we're going to structure this debate. As you'll have seen from the order paper, we have a number of amendments, including that exotic beast, an amendment within an amendment. So I'll explain a little bit how we're going to do it. Firstly, though, can I welcome those who are here as visitors or in the gallery? You're very welcome. It's important that we do our business in public here, but remind visitors that the requirement on you is you remain silent and refrain from any interjections or even any applause. Those who are visitors here are required to be completely silent through the course of our debate. We do have a plan to be finished by 7, and that's certainly my firm intention, so I'm not looking for extensions to this debate this evening. Having looked through the various amendments, there are 2 very large amendments, items 55 and 56. I think the best way for us to deal with those is that we talk about them within the general debate. So once Jayne Ozanne has introduced the debate, we'll have a small number of speeches. Then I'll invite Dr. Doherty and Dr. Harrison to speak to but not move their amendments. Then we'll have some more general conversation around the subject. Probably a good half an hour at least of that. Then when it looks like we're about half an hour from closing time, I'll be wanting to move us on to the voting process, and in particular to explain, well, item 57, quite complex. We have to have a little debate within debate. We have to decide 57 before we have a final text of 56 on which we vote, if we get that far. 58, if we get that far, we will take at the end. We've had lots of requests to speak. Thank you for that, and thank you for being very clear about the sort of things you want to speak about. That helps us to structure the debate. Once the proposer has opened the batting, I'm going to immediately move to a 3-minute speech limit, in order to get in as many as possible of the 50 or so people who've asked to speak. We'll not get you all in. Apologies for that. We may take other people who intervene from the floor. But, well, without more ado, Synod, I call upon Ms Jayne Ozanne to open the batting.
Ozanne, Oxford 379. Chair, I would like to thank Synod for enabling this important safeguarding debate. Conversion therapy is best defined as the umbrella term for a type of talking therapy or activity which attempts to change sexual orientation or gender identity. It is unethical, harmful, and has no place in the modern world. It is discredited by the government, the NHS, the Royal College of Psychiatrists, the College of General Practitioners, and many other senior healthcare bodies. Indeed, the Department of Health was so concerned about this practice that they brought together for the very first time all the major healthcare bodies to agree a landmark statement condemning conversion therapy, the 2015 Memorandum of Understanding, which Jeremy Harrison's amendment refers to and which I'm happy to support, along with Christina Barron's and Andrew Dotchin's amendments. Synod, even the Association of Christian Counsellors has publicly condemned conversion therapy. Alongside this unanimous professional condemnation, we must also listen to the experience of those who have undergone this therapy and testify to its harm. If there is one thing we must learn as a church from the horrors highlighted in the Gibb report, it is that we must take seriously the testimonies of victims of abuse. We must also look to support them in its aftermath. To do otherwise, we've been warned, is to continue to add to their pain and so cause even greater suffering. Victims of abuse must be heard. Their stories should never go unheeded or ignored. If we are humble enough to learn from our mistakes, we will create a safer world where none go through the trauma that some of us have endured. Please let us be clear. Conversion therapy is abuse from which vulnerable adults need protecting, and that's why I strongly urge you to resist Sean Doherty's amendment, which I know is well meant, but stops us from giving a firm rebuttal to this abhorrent practice. Whilst I recognise that we have yet to find a way forward in our theological divisions over sexuality, it is beholden on us to ensure that we have adequate safeguards in place to protect those who are at the heart of this debate. This particularly applies to those who are in the process of discovering their sexual orientation or gender identity, as that they and we know that the church is a safe place while they do so. The January 2017 statement by the healthcare professionals noted in my motion makes clear sexual orientations and gender identities are not mental health disorders, although exclusion, stigma and prejudice may precipitate mental health issues for any person subjected to these abuses. The professionals' concern here is that in treating someone as sick or disordered who wants to change their sexual orientation or gender identity, one reinforces the notion that who they are is wrong or sinful. It sets up a hierarchy of identity where being heterosexual and having a gender identity that matches the sex one is born with is seen as superior to other identities. It is this differentiation that is viewed as being harmful by the medical profession, as it leads to stigmatization and prejudice, which then leads to increased stress amongst those who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, intersex or transgender. This increased stress can then lead to significant mental health risks to the LGBTI community, which are not faced by the heterosexual community. Synod may be interested to learn that in a recent online survey I created for the LGBTI community, 217 of the completed 553 responses, i.e. just under 40%, had willingly gone through some form of conversion therapy to try and change their sexual orientation. Amongst these respondents, over two-thirds, 68%, stated they'd chosen to do so because they believed it to be sinful. 44% said that they'd done so because they thought it would be difficult to live out. A third because their church and friends disapproved of their sexual orientation, and a quarter because their church leader disapproved. All this shows that for many of these people, the case of stigma and prejudice was a key motivation. What is perhaps most alarming, though, is that just under half, 48%, were 17 or under at the time they started this, with nearly three-quarters, 74%, under 20. We are therefore dealing with young, vulnerable adults at the very start of their adult lives, who then often carry the impact of this stigma for years, and sadly for some, this proves just too much. The study, which has many parts, will be published in full shortly. One section involves respondents rating the helpfulness and damage of various types of conversion therapy. Synod won't be surprised to learn that dedicated conversion therapy ministries rated alongside electric shock treatment and deliverance ministry for being most damaging or least helpful, whilst the most helpful was talking to psychotherapists, family and friends. Synod, given the weight of professional concern, it is shocking to me that some Christians continue to want to defend the practice of conversion therapy, particularly as a hierarchy of human identity is unbiblical. God has created us all equal, yet unique. We are each fearfully and wonderfully made. Indeed, there is no sexual underclass in the kingdom of God. Our challenge is therefore not with who we are or how we are created, but how we choose to live our lives in holiness and truth. At this point, I think it's important to be clear about what we mean by the term sexual orientation. Academics define it as our innate sexual desire, which is quite separate to any sexual behaviour or activity. As Dr. Kazi Rahman, Senior Lecturer in Neuropsychology from King's College London, has explained, our innate desire cannot be changed by external factors. We can, of course, try to suppress or hide our orientation and endeavour to adopt a conflicting behaviour because we deem our desire to be wrong. Both suppression and denial are liable to lead to long-term mental health issues. This, many would argue, then raises the question of sexual fluidity. This certainly does exist, but as Professors Michael King and Robert Song point out in their briefing note, sexual fluidity is associated with natural fluctuations in underlying sexual desire, and is not proof in itself that desire can be manipulated by therapy. A word now about healing. I, like all of us I hope, believe in a God who heals. Indeed, it was because I believed this that I, like many others, willingly chose to undergo conversion therapy. As such, I received prayer for emotional healing, particularly of key relationships, as well as deliverance ministry, and prayer to cut off generational spiritual influences. This was done by kind but mostly professionally unqualified prayer ministry individuals who too wanted to see me healed. The prayer would seemingly work for a few months, even years, and then I would find myself struggling again, ashamed and guilty that it hadn't worked. I became depressed, wondering why God was not choosing to heal me. As my desperation grew, I turned to look for reasons why the healing didn't come. Many sincere Christians, armed with the warped theology of conversion therapy, implied it must be my fault. It led to 2 breakdowns and 2 spells in hospital, with my body cracking under the stress. And my story is sadly not unique. Dr. Emma Foster, affiliated to Teesside University, is delivering a paper today at the annual conference of the British Psychological Society Division of Counselling Psychology on this very subject. Her own qualitative research, focusing on a small sample of participants on the harm of conversion therapy, has concluded that the negative impact of the reparative therapy was significant and was experienced both physically and mentally, as well as during and after the treatment sessions. It resulted in self-harm, suicide attempts, and problems with relationships and sexual functioning. The therapy was ineffective in changing their same-sex attraction. In short, conversion therapy is harmful, dangerous, and just doesn't work. People may be able to alter their behaviour, but they can never alter their innate desire. It's taken me a lifetime to accept I am who I am, and it is this truth that the health professionals are keen to help us all accept, no matter how much we may wish otherwise. As is said in the 2015 Memorandum of Understanding, this is not intended to discourage clients with conflicted feelings around sexuality seeking help. Psychological therapists routinely work with people who are struggling with inner conflict. Affirmative counselling is key. Anything else, no matter how well-intentioned, is usually ineffective, although it may help in altering behaviour. This debate may seem to some to be a complex and confusing one. The calls for more scientific evidence and proof of harm are a smokescreen. Please know it is rare for randomised control samples to show evidence of harm, as it would take several years of careful monitoring. In addition, it's highly unlikely that any reputable ethics committee would ever give approval for a trial of a treatment they strongly suspect, due to the many testimonial reports, to be harmful. This debate is actually quite simple. Do we trust our medical health professions and academics, including many sincerely godly Christians, to know what they're talking about? Should we listen to the voices of those we and others have unwittingly harmed? Should we learn from our mistakes and seek to protect future generations from the sort of damage that was done to me and so many others? All the medical professionals are in one accord, and I urge you, please, to support this motion, standing in my name.
Thank you. This item is now open for debate, and the speech limit is 3 minutes. Let's begin with Dr. Simon Clift, followed by Ms. Fenella Cannings-Jerd, please.
Simon Clift, Winchester 424. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my reflections. Some of the examples of conversion therapy that we can read about and see on YouTube are truly jaw-dropping and toe-curling. And so who wouldn't want to support this motion in order to protect vulnerable people from unethical and unprincipled practices? But as Christian leaders elected to Synod to discern God's wisdom in such matters, we're not called simply to fall in line with public opinion, or even a statement such as the one before us from expert health professionals, and I speak as a health professional myself, without further reflection. Preparing to serve as missionaries within the Anglican Church of Tanzania during our cross-cultural mission studies, we were invited to consider the seminal work of Richard Niebuhr, Christ and Culture, first published in 1951. And he presents 5 different views on the possible relationship between gospel and culture. And I remember my heart warming to the idea of Christ above culture, holding up the Tanzanian culture with my Tanzanian brothers and sisters to the light of the gospel, with a view to the ultimately seeing its transformation. And I would argue that the same approach is called for here. So with courage and wisdom, we critique and challenge prevailing views for the sake of the gospel. As Synod, I suspect we would all recognise the fundamental importance of faith and beliefs in shaping our conduct and attitudes in the realm of our sexuality, and how those firmly held beliefs are at times painfully at odds with our feelings and desires. So where such a conflict arises, and in particular where this leads to significant distress and even dysphoria, what should our response be as a church? I ask us to consider two examples of Christians who hold current teaching on the church matters of human sexuality. Consider a married man with a wife and children increasingly struggling with unwanted same-sex erotic desires, or a 19-year-old woman brought up in a Christian home who is deeply disturbed by her sexual desires for both men and women. Surely one legitimate option in both situations would be for such individuals to seek the input of appropriately trained therapists who can sensitively and respectfully enable them to address these desires in order to diminish them. Therefore, I urge Synod to continue to affirm and support such individuals by not supporting the motion as it currently stands. Thank you.
We'll have Fenella Cannings-Jerd, followed by Reverend Sally Gaze, please.
Fenella Cannings-Jerd, Salisbury, 401. In October 2016, YouGov released a poll saying that 38% of 18 to 24-year-olds thought that churches were not hospitable to gay people. Now, Synod, I have to confess, I am among that 38%. This is not to say that there are no wonderfully welcoming, affirming and inclusive churches in this nation, but rather that as a collective church, as the Church of England, we are inhospitable to LGBTQI people. We are inhospitable because in 2017 we are seriously debating the relative pros and cons of condemning conversion therapy. We are seriously debating therapy that seeks to change people's God-given identities. We are seriously inhospitable because whilst we debate and reflect and consider, important as all of that is, young people continue to see us as doing nothing. Worse, if this motion is rejected, they see us as actively endorsing behaviour that is by and large seen as a violation of basic human rights. How do we expect to convince the young people within our church, myself included, of the powerfully loving, redemptive message of Christ if we cannot even bring ourselves to condemn the therapies that undermine this love? And if we cannot convince those few young people within our church that this church preaches the love and redemption of Jesus Christ, if we cannot convince those few young people already brought to Christ by the work and the worship of the Church of England, then what chance do we stand with the millions of young people in this country who don't already believe, those who we seek to mission to, the millions of young people for whom acceptance of LGBTQI people is a given? How can we teach the love of Christ if we ourselves are not living out this love? Thank you.
After Sally Gaze, I'm going to invite Dr. Sean Doherty to speak to but not move his amendment, and after him I'm going to invite Dr. Jamie Harrison, ditto. Again, for all of this, we're still on the 3-minute speech limit, folks.
I actually intend to speak for the amendment. Do you still wish me to go ahead?
This is a general debate. Feel free to speak about any matter that's under this debate. And
so, Sally Gaze, Norwich 179. There is no sense in which I wish us as Synod to say that the abusive practices within conversion therapy, as we usually have understood it, are okay. They're obviously not okay, and I'm sure all of us would wish to condemn them. But the note from the Secretary-General, as we have it, uses and quotes that conversion therapy is something very, very broadly defined, something that could include, even if somebody asks me to pray with them about changing their sexual desires, somebody perhaps who is married and asks me to pray with them. And I, as a parish priest, have often prayed with people things that I don't think are necessarily going to happen. I've been asked to pray for raising the dead, for example, and I did pray for that to happen. And I believe that even though it didn't happen, that it was an important part of that person's journey to reconciling themselves to that death, that I was able to pray with them in that way. And so I'm reluctant for us to vote for something that does not give us the freedom to respond to people's requests for prayer in that way. I want to vote for the amendment because it does show respect for the views of the professional bodies, but without speaking as if we were one of them. If you look at the people who have affirmed this, they are speaking as people who offer professional therapy. We as the Church of England are mainly amateurs. We are amateurs in the sense that we love, and we come alongside people not mainly as professionals, but mainly as friends and as brothers and sisters in Christ. I don't think we should be acting like professionals on something that we don't know so much about. I also want to vote for the amendment because it talks theologically, and that is something that we do know something about. And it does talk about our sexualities being affected, all of our sexualities being affected by the fall, and not one being superior to another, which is speaking something to the heart of why this motion was put in the first place. I believe the amendment is more specific about what it is that we are seeking to avoid in our own pastoral practices, and talk specifically about what we want to do, rather than just giving a general condemnation. And finally, sorry.
No, thank you, finished.
Okay, thank you, I finished.
Dr. Doherty, followed by Dr. Harrison, please.
Sean Doherty, London 159. Thank you, Chair. And I want to thank Jayne Ozanne for raising this important matter in Synod and for her gracious acknowledgement that my amendment is well-intentioned. Let me be clear, I am opposed to conversion therapy, and I trust so is my amendment. I've criticised conversion therapy heavily in print and online. So why do I want to amend this motion? First, there have been a flurry of letters and emails trying to convince us one way or another with respect to the scientific evidence. But when it comes to gender identity especially, the scientific community itself is divided, which is why the Royal College of Psychiatrists have not signed this statement. For this reason, if no other, I don't think we can support this motion as it stands. And if my amendment falls, I'll be very pleased to support Jamie Harrison's. Like me, most of us in the room are simply not qualified to assess the scientific evidence, and it would be divisive and messy to try to do so on the floor of Synod. So paragraph A of my amendment allows us to recognise what these professional bodies have said without needing to judge it for ourselves. Paragraph B, however, then deliberately echoes what is absolutely theologically right about the statement, namely that all sexuality is affected by the fall. I agree absolutely with Jane, there is no hierarchy. Heterosexuality is just as fallen as homosexuality. Straight is not better than gay. None of us have any moral high ground. So my amendment explicitly rules out therapy or pastoral care, which assumes that it is better to be straight than gay. Paragraph B defines precisely what the problem with conversion therapy is and rules that out on a theological rather than a disputed scientific basis. But to my mind, the original motion does not go far enough. The original motion speaks only of conversion therapy and says nothing about ministry within the church. So paragraph C then explicitly rules out not just conversion therapy, but bad pastoral practice as well. Given these practices, though, such as prayer ministry and pastoral care are not wrong, but can be conducted in such damaging ways, how are we to know what is good and bad practice? Which brings us to paragraph D. I very much share Jayne's concerns about safeguarding. This is a brief debate on something which has a profound impact on the lives of gay people. And if we endorse or sign this statement as it is, then that's the end of the matter. Again, the original motion does not go far enough. So paragraph D of my amendment asks that we should ask for further guidance from the House of Bishops as to what would be good and bad practice, so that this is not the end of the matter. To summarise, my amendment notes the dominant medical opinion, rules out therapy based on the erroneous assumption that straight is better than gay, broadens the scope of the motion to include pastoral practice, and ensures that this is not the end of the matter. I therefore commend it to you. Thank you.
After Dr. Harrison, we'll be continuing with some general debate. There'll be time for perhaps another 4 or 5 speeches before we start moving to formal proposals of amendments. So if you're kind of wanting to get your word in, it'd be a good idea to stand after Dr. Harrison has given his speech. Otherwise, if you want to come in right at the end, you're dicing with fire. Dr. Harrison.
Jamie Harrison, Durham 299. Mr. Chairman, thank you. My amendment offers to the Synod the option to endorse the concerns that we've heard raised, but not via the 2017 statement of Jayne, which she's given us, but rather by the 2015 Memorandum of Understanding on conversion therapy in the UK, which I hope you've had a chance to see in one form or another. This deals specifically with conversion therapy in relation to sexual orientation only, and such psychological therapies that then pose questions, of course, of ethics and of potential harm, as we've heard. And, of course, between us, we've received much advice on the matter in the last few days. It should be noted the 2015 MOU, as I'll call it, recognised, and I quote, that this position is not intended to discourage clients with conflicted feelings around sexuality to seek help. To my mind, it does not preclude trained and regulated therapists offering careful conversation in the context of empathy, confidentiality and informed consent. The 2017 statement, again in Jayne's motion, includes gender identity as well as sexual orientation. I suggest that these two are separate categories and demand separate consideration. It's already been pointed out how complex and contested this arena is. The 2017 statement speaks of harm rather than potential harm, and I think also distorts by a focus on intentionality. And as we've already heard from Simon and others, it's noteworthy that the Royal College of Psychiatrists chose not to sign the 2017 statement, I understand, through lack of convicted evidence that there's a proven harm in this area. The evidence base wasn't strong enough. So I want to suggest to Synod that should we wish to endorse something, then the document we should be endorsing will be the 2015 rather than the 2017 statement. But my amendment also deletes Jayne's little b. Now, of course, I speak as a member of Archbishop's Council, but not on its behalf. And I do worry about the competency and capability of the Council to pass judgment on evidence presented in this rather technical and complex area. We heard this morning of thematic working groups being set up, not least that of Bishop Sarah Mullally on social and biological sciences. And we pray that their work and that particular group's work will be fruitful, informative, not too tardy, but help us in this very important context. My new section B acknowledges the importance of gender identity in contemporary culture, so that as a journeying together as a church, we are sensitive, receptive, and in listening mode. Of course, should you either pass Jayne's motion unamended or the amendment to my amendment, I will, of course, take very seriously the question of signing something on behalf of, as part of the Council. But I do think I want to be cautious. I'd rather go with 2015 than 2017, as I say, I'm very happy to go with the Synod's mind and do the best I can.
I'll go with Lisa Batty, followed by Angus MacLeay, please.
Lisa Batty, Manchester 169. I'm speaking as an accepting evangelical. I want to see the full inclusion of gay people in the church. I'm very pro that. I'm also trained in counselling and also in advanced psychoanalysis in group work. And that's made a funny mix for me considering this. Out of my considerations, I've come to the conclusion that our best course of action today will be to note the January statement, to remind our people that any care we offer needs to respect others' needs and must not involve coercion or manipulation or make unwarranted promises. But I don't think we should interject an ideological critique to the work of other caring professions that most of us do not know enough about and which are not asking for our help. I think the wording of Sean's amendment is the right offering regarding the work of safeguarding of gay people in our church, and I commend that amendment to us today.
We'll have Lisa Batty followed by the Bishop of Liverpool, please. Oh, sorry, by Angus Maclay, then the Bishop. So Angus Maclay followed by the Bishop of Liverpool.
Angus Maclay, Rochester 200. Clearly there's uncertainty about the science, but the scriptures are clear. We have to be guided by the truth of God's word. We also need to recognise that we certainly must root out bad practice where people are coerced or pressurised. We must constantly be guided by grace and love, and therefore it is grace and truth together in all pastoral practice that we must aspire to. My key concern, though, with the proposed resolution are some of the underlying assumptions. If we were to go to 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 9 to 11, reading from the NIV, it says, "Or do you not know that wrongdoers will not inherit the kingdom of God?" Who are they? Well, the apostle goes on and says, "Do not be deceived, neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor men who have sex with men, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor the drunkards, nor slanderers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God." The apostle covers all sorts of sinful behaviour, certainly not prioritising one over the others. But how does he proceed? And this is the key point. And that is what some of you were. It highlights that the congregation in Corinth included many who had previously been involved in all of the various behaviours listed. Yet through the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, they had been washed clean, set apart, put right with God. In other words, the mark of the gospel of Christ are radical Christian inclusion. All are welcome to enter Christ's kingdom, come as you are, and radical Christian change. All are called to change through the work of the cross of Christ and the indwelling Spirit. We are not, none of us, to stay as we are. And 1 Corinthians is about the holiness, the set-apartness of the church and the affirmation of our bodies as the arena in which holiness is worked out. And yet that call, not just for radical Christian inclusion, but also radical Christian change, is missing. And that is what needs to be heard in all our debates in these areas. Thank you.
The Bishop of Liverpool, then we'll have Canon Kate Wharton, please.
Paul Bowes from Liverpool, number 26. As the world listens to us today, the world needs to hear us say that LGBTI orientation and identity is not a crime, not a sickness, and not a sin. We must distinguish between an ascetic and a therapeutic approach. In the church, we are certainly called to help one another to conform our lives to Jesus Christ and to live lives of holiness. But we do not need to engage people in healing therapy if they are not sick. We disagree, friends, about the way forward for LGBTI people who want to live in holiness. Some here, Angus for one, will insist that celibacy is the only way. Others here, including me, would want to offer the choice of celibacy or faithful, permanent, stable relationship to LGBTI people, just as we routinely offer it to heterosexual, cisgender people in our church. But these disagreements are not at issue today. What matters here is that a therapeutic model is not appropriate if LGBTI orientation identity is not a sickness. And if the church suggests that really actually it is, then our many statements opposing homophobia are cancelled, and the world will think that in fact we really do believe LGBTI people to be second-class humans no matter how they behave. And this is not acceptable to me, and I hope not to this synod. That's why I will vote for this motion or for Jayne's amendment if the synod prefers it. Later this month at home we will celebrate Liverpool Pride, with which I am privileged and proud to be associated. We celebrate Pride later than most people because of the death of Michael Causer, an 18-year-old gay man who died in August 2008 following a brutal homophobic attack. He did not die because he was sick or sinful or because he had committed a crime. He died because he was hated. In a culture where that hate was ignored or avoided or tolerated or fed. And we, the church, must seize every opportunity to say that we will not have a culture in which such hate can find purchase, and to say that all people need help to live lives of holiness, but that no one needs to be ashamed or cured of their orientation or identity, and that it is spiritually abusive to suggest that they do. I exhort Synod to vote for this motion, and I exhort the Archbishop's Council to respond positively to the motion's request.
Thank you. After Kate Wharton, I'd like to hear from Mr. Ed Cox for the maiden speech, I believe.
Kate Wharton, Liverpool 157. Thank you, Chair. I'm certain, of course, that all of us would agree that this is a vitally important subject, that it's really important that we are careful about what we say and do on this subject. The world is watching. Some of the scenarios which are discussed and outlined in this motion and the attached paper are, of course, deeply problematic. There are certain approaches and practices which would come under the banner of conversion therapy, which are obviously completely abhorrent and entirely unacceptable. This motion draws on advice from highly respected professional bodies such as the Royal College of Psychiatrists and the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, and it also quotes debates which have been held in the House of Commons. On the face of it, then, it seems that reason, compassion, scientific and therapeutic guidance and sheer common sense would all suggest that this motion must be supported. However, much as I wish to stand against any form of conversion therapy which is harmful or manipulative or dangerous, or which wrongly treats a person's sexual identity as a sin or a disorder, I find that I cannot support this unamended motion. There is, I fear, a lack of clarity and nuance. In April, Jayne Ozanne gave a talk at a gathering of the Royal College of Psychiatrists entitled Spiritual Abuse, the Next Great Scandal for the Church. In that presentation, Jayne discussed what she called the charismatic leader and charismatic tribe model, and made particular reference to Alpha, the Evangelical Alliance, Spring Harvest and New Wine, including showing a photograph claiming to be of New Wine, but which was not. I must at this point declare an interest, since I am one of 2 assistant national leaders of New Wine. I do not, of course, deny that in some parts of the charismatic church mistakes have been made in the past, lessons have been learned and will continue to be learned. But I simply do not recognise the description given of the charismatic tribe, and I find the casual link between outlining charismatic ministry practices and condemning spiritually abusive practices to be tenuous and unfair. I do not feel it's possible to support this unamended motion as it stands, because it's too open to misinterpretation and misunderstanding, and I believe risks taking us in the wrong direction. I am deeply concerned of the unintended consequences were this to pass unamended. Will I find myself in a situation at New Wine in my church in conversation where someone confides in me, I offer prayer, only to find myself later accused of something else? I am unable to support the motion unamended, but I will be supporting Sean Doherty's amendment and urge others to do the same. I believe this enables us to rightly speak out against harmful and dangerous forms of conversion therapy without unwittingly condemning all forms of charismatic prayer and ministry at the same time. It provides helpful nuance to the original motion and therefore means we can critique and condemn what is harmful without also condemning or sidelining what have been and remain integral facets of Christian pastoral ministry.
Thank you. After Mr. Ed Cox, I'll be inviting Dr. Sean Doherty to formally move the amendment that stands in his name.
Edward Cox, CUIC 483. Thank you, Chair, for calling me forward for my maiden speech for this speech, and thank you to Jane for bringing this forward to Synod. I would like to start off by announcing myself as Christine Hardman had put it earlier, a bit defective of the norm, but I would also like to announce myself as a scientist. Please do not start clinging to science when it suits you. Please do not start looking for it and answers in it when you have ignored it before. I may also add that age doesn't equal experience, experience equals experience. And I'm speaking as somebody who has struggled with same-sex attraction, who has been gay, who is queer, whichever term you choose to use. I may not have 40 years of ministry and 14 books behind me, but I have that. Earlier, Justin Welby spoke of the importance of seeing people and making sure that they are treasured, that they are loved, that they are valued. Well, all too often this has not occurred for LGBTQI people. My personal experience was that my same-sex attraction was rooted in my poor relationship with my father. It was a lifestyle choice, it was a phase, it was experimenting, and it needed prayer. If God would just bless me, it would go away. This fundamentally says, you are wrong. My view of myself was this, that I was made wrong. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with severe depression because of this. This kind of therapy is emotionally, mentally, and spiritually abusive. So please, Synod, pass this motion. Thank you.
Dr. Doherty, just the three little words.
I so move.
Point of order. Well, we haven't had the debate yet. The next thing I have to do is to invite Ms Ozanne to comment on Dr. Doherty's amendment. She has up to 2 minutes to do so.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Bertrand, for later. Synod, I urge you to strongly resist this statement, which is completely different to the motion that I originally tabled, and could be a different motion for a different day. My primary concern is that it only notes that conversion therapy is unethical and harmful, potentially harmful, and therefore carries no sense of approval or endorsement to either of the two statements. Are we really going to say to the world that we don't want to endorse what our medical professionals and academics who are of one accord are telling us on this, or indeed listen to the testimonies such as Ed, a very powerful testimony of what abuse he and others have suffered? The strength of opposition and the views expressed in the communications you received in the run-up to Synod show the mindset of those who want this practice to continue, and we've heard it also in speeches, and why, therefore, my private member's motion is so urgently needed. This is the world I grew up in, and I know so well, and one I found so hard to come out into. It's what motivates me to ensure that we have the right protections in place for other vulnerable adults. We are indeed all affected by the fall, but some of us are evidently more affected than others. We don't pray for people to become straight. We don't pray for people to become gay. I would suggest that the House of Bishops Pastoral Advisory Group has already committed itself for drawing up guidelines on this, and that is where this is best done. Sadly, this very sincere, well-meant wrecking motion from those who still don't seem to understand the deep trauma that conversion therapy causes is behind this, and I do urge you to resist it, please.
Thank you. Debate on item 55 is now open. I'm hoping this isn't going to be a particularly lengthy debate, maybe just a couple of speeches of 2 minutes length, and I see the prolocutor of the Southern Province standing, so we'll have him first, followed by, yes, gentleman over there.
Thank you. Simon Butler, Southwark 219. Like Sean and Kate and Jane, I am no lover of conversion therapy. And I'm sure the vast majority of members of this synod, but I think we ought to resist Sean's amendment, although we've talked about it and I understand what drives him. I want us to endorse, not note. Sean has pointed out that we are not experts, but as an ethicist, he is perfectly able to make judgments about the truth of various things on the basis of secular ethical thinking. So why can't we exercise that same judgment ourselves as a synod? I want to endorse, not note, because I believe, like Jane and like Ed, that there are some in our church who are causing harm to others. Jane has said so, Ed has said so. I feel terrified sometimes when I go to an eggs meeting because of what I'm likely to face. Gibbs just told us that one of the dangers of our culture is that we excuse people because they're doing good work. I don't want there to be any comfort for the perpetrators of abuse over this matter, and no comfort for those who think that a few depressed or suicidal gays is a price worth paying for their own particular pastoral approach. This needs to be resisted. Sean is absolutely right. I wish we could divide his motion into two, because I love C and D, but because he does not endorse but only notes, I have to resist it.
After Dr. Athelby, I think I'd be interested in a motion for closure on this amendment.
Thank you, John Appleby, Newcastle 367. This motion, which I signed, addresses one major issue with three consequent problems. Firstly, the word conversion implies, in this case, a change of nature or identity and not a viewpoint or ideas, and therefore is in conflict with the valuing of our God-given nature. Secondly, therapy implies some sort of disorder, which is also wrong, as an individual's sexual orientation and identity is not a disorder. Thus, conversion therapy is doubly and fundamentally at odds with our acceptance of people in all their diversity. This motion is not against counselling to help come to terms with sexuality or to help deal with unwanted desires, and therefore counselling is relevant to single and married, straight and gay. If someone is deeply distressed, then therapy, and I mean therapy, may help deal with that distress, which is a problem. The third problem in with this issue concerns the genuine freedom of choice, a problem in all contexts where we must always be careful. The last point is to say that requiring something to be described as harmful only when it's always harmful is unrealistic. We now accept the statement that smoking is bad for your health. We don't insist that we say it's bad for 80% of those sampled. We just accept the statement. However, whether we say harmful or can be harmful, I would urge you to support the motion. Thank you.
Point of order. Mr. Freeman. That would have my approval. The motion is for closure on item 55. Does it have Synod's approval? Those in favour, please show. Thank you. Those against, please show. Thank you. That is clearly carried. Item 55 now comes to the vote. Sir. A vote by houses. Do we need a certain number of people standing? If 25 members stand. Yeah, if 25 of you will stand to request that, then, oh yes, we shall have a vote by houses. Mr. Registrar.
I am about to ring the bell to warn members that a counted vote is to take place. 2 minutes after it ceases, the counted vote will begin. Not as long as it took when we used to go through the doors there. Yeah, I'm afraid so. Time's up.
The 2 minutes have elapsed. This is a counted vote by Houses on item 55. I will not read out the whole of the item. It's available on the screens. Those in favour, press 1. Those against, press 2. Those who wish to record an abstention, press 3.
The voting period is now open and will end in 1 minute. The voting period will end in 15 seconds. The voting period has ended.
Just a reminder, Synod, that we do receive the results of votes in silence. They're voted in the House of Bishops in favour 10, against 26, with 2 abstentions. In the House of Clergy in favour 64, against 110, with 2 abstentions. In the House of Laity in favour 88, against 97, with 6 abstentions. The motion is therefore lost in all 3 houses. We move on now to item 55, and I'd like Dr. Harrison to utter the 3 magic words. No? 56, yes, and I invite Dr. Harrison to utter the magic words. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Jayne Ozanne to comment on Dr. Harrison's amendment. She has up to 2 minutes. She won't get a chance to comment on Christina Barron's amendment to the amendment, so if she wants to do that, she needs to incorporate that into her time.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to support Jamie's amendment, should Synod wish to do so. The 2015 Memorandum of Understanding was signed by 17 professional organisations, including the Royal College of Psychiatrists and the Association of Christian Counsellors. It is primarily a code of practice for practitioners, but it is equally valid for us, as it shows what we should be aspiring to in terms of best practice as a church. The issue regarding the Royal College of Psychiatrists is a complex one regarding the transgender issue, and I would say the World Professional Association for Transgender Health have put out a statement saying that the stigma attached to gender non-conformity can lead to prejudice and discrimination, just as it does for lesbian, gay and bisexual people, and therefore they are very concerned about conversion therapy. However, I think Jamie Harrison's Part B, which says that we need to learn more about this, is something that we should attend to at this time. My key concern is actually that we do endorse Christina Barron's amendment to the amendment, which it retains the element of signing. It's incredibly important that we do this as the Church of England, firstly because it is a public declaration of our position, so there is no confusion amongst our members or indeed the general public as to where we stand. Secondly, and this is very important, because it puts us at the forefront of involving other religious organisations in this important debate. By leading in this critical area of safeguarding, we will hopefully encourage other faiths and Christian denominations to take a similar stance. And there this issue is even more pronounced, with many being sent home to their native countries amongst minority ethnics for corrective rape practices. Finally, it will ensure the Church a seat at the table alongside the government and all the other signatories for future debates and work on this important topic. And I know there is more to come in the future and they would like us to be involved. So please support both amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to call on Christina Barron to speak to and move her amendment. She has again a maximum of 2 minutes, after which, as we spent most of our time on general conversation, general debate, I'm going to be looking for a motion for closure without any further debate, if that has the mind of Synod. Ms Barron.
Christina Barron, 245 Bath and Wells. I was robbed. I was told I'd have 3 minutes. This amendment asks the Archbishop's Council to sign the 2015 Memorandum of Understanding. I hope you've all seen it. It was emailed and it's on the notice board outside, so if you want to nip out very quickly and read it. The agreement of the current signatories would be required if we wanted to add our signature, and that's provided for in my amendment. Someone said to me, aren't all the other bodies which have signed health bodies? Well, no, the Scottish Government has signed, and indeed Relate, formerly the Marriage Guidance Council, which has a lot of similarities with us in a way. They do employ unpaid counsellors who have had training. So I think there's a certain similarity there. The undertaking says, a shared commitment to protecting the public from the risks of conversion therapy. There is no good evidence that it works and evidence that it has the potential to cause harm. The Church of England has been seen in the past often as unwelcoming to lesbians and gays. Passing this amendment would go some way to correcting that impression, and the Church of England would be taking a lead. Our church, the Church for all the people of England, would be taking a lead in good pastoral care for people whom we have often let down.
I think, Mr Freeman, I just need to allow Dr Harrison to respond to the debate. That's my mistake, but if you'd be standing ready in a moment.
Durham 299. Yes, I'm obviously said I was cautious about the Council being asked to do this within its competency and capability, but I would like the Synod to obviously decide for us.
Mr Freeman. That has my agreement. This is a motion for closure on item 57, which is Christina Barron's amendment to Jamie Harrison's amendment. Are you minded to go for closure? Those in favour, please show. Thank you. Those against, please show. That is very clearly carried. We now go directly to a vote on 57, on Christina Barron's amendment. That is allowed, and if 25 of you are requiring that. Looks like it. Yes, there are. So, once again, a vote by houses on 57, the amendment to Dr. Harrison's amendment.
I'm about to ring the bell to warn members that a counted vote is to take place. 2 minutes after it ceases, the division will begin.
This is a counted vote by houses on item 57. Those in favour should press 1, those against 2, those who wish to record an abstention should press 3.
Voting period is now open. Will end in 1 minute. Voting period will end in 15 seconds. The voting period has now ended.
On item 57, they're voted as follows. In the House of Bishops, in favour 16, against 16, with 5 recorded abstentions. In the House of Clergy, in favour 117, against 46, with 12 recorded abstentions. In the House of Laity, in favour 108, against 73, with 11 recorded abstentions. It has not passed because it has not passed in the House of Bishops. A tie does not constitute pass. The amendment is lost. We revert to item 56 as unamended, but I think we've probably debated enough. And if my friends want to propose a motion of closure? Mr. Freeman? A motion for closure on item 56, that has my agreement. Has it the agreement of Synod? Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? That is clearly carried. We therefore move to a vote on item 56. Would those in favour please show? Oh, did I hear a point of order? As before, if there are 25 people standing for that, we shall. Those who wish to stand for a vote by houses, it's your supper time. I think there is. Yes. There are 25 standing. Once again, on item 56, we're moving to a vote by houses. Mr. Registrar.
I will now ring the bell. The division will begin 2 minutes after it ceases.
Thank you, Synod. Once again, a counted vote by houses. Those in favour, it's the 1. Those against, it's the 2. Those recording abstentions, it's 3.
The voting period is now open. It will end in 1 minute. 15 seconds. Voting period is now in.
Synod, they've voted in favour in the House of Bishops, in favour 35, against 1 with 2 recorded abstentions. House of Clergy in favour 142, against 25 with 7 recorded abstentions. In the House of Laity 165, in favour 20 against, 5 recorded abstentions. It was carried in all 3 houses. Synod, I'm going to ask you for the thing I really promised I wasn't going to. Can we have another quarter of an hour and just finish off this business tonight? I really wouldn't want this to have to stand adjourned and deal with it again at a later date. So I'm proposing we extend this session by a maximum of 15 minutes so that we can get through Mr. Dochin's amendment and any final votes. Those in favour of such an extension, please show. Those against, please show. Thank you very much. That is clearly carried. Mr. Dochin, would you like to move your amendment? You have, I'm afraid, just 2 minutes. We are really tight.
What can I say, Chair, but trust me, I'm a vicar. Thank you, Chair. Andrew Dochin, St Edmundsbury and Ipswich, 208. Synod, in proposing the amendment to call on the government to ban the practice of conversion therapy, I expect we will find it welcomed by Parliament. There have already been several debates within the Houses as to whether such a ban should be imposed, and there's still much pressure amongst MPs to enact such a ban. As long ago as November 2013, in an early day motion, MP Sandra Osborne found MPs across the House united in calling for a ban on conversion therapy for under 18s. This led to signing a landmark 2015 Memorandum of Understanding, which we have just concurred with. A second debate on the 3rd of November 2015 by Conservative MP Mike Freer again expressed concern that it remained possible for people to refer to NHS practitioners for gay conversion therapy. The Under-Secretary of State for Health assured members that we would eradicate that. By accepting my amendment, Synod will help the government go ahead and put into practice a ban that members on both sides of the House have asked for and would be welcomed by them. If countries such as Taiwan and Malta, a fiercely Catholic country, as well as various states in the USA, can ban conversion therapy, then surely so can we. My personal concern, though, is the threat to the life that the very idea of conversion therapy brings to vulnerable young LGBTI people. I still weep over the suicide of Lizzie Lowe, and I would be horrified if another rainbow child of God took their life because the Church allowed even the remotest possibility for them to be abused. This must not happen. I urge you to support my amendment so that we send a very clear and loud signal to our LGBTI members and the watching world that we find this practice abhorrent and we want it ended.
So, Jayne Ozanne, as the proposer of the main motion, to respond, maximum of a minute, Jayne.
Andrew, thank you so much for tabling this amendment, which I gladly accept, as it takes the motion one step further and puts us in a place of leading rather than following on this important safeguarding issue. As he's correctly pointed out, there have been continued calls from MPs, and the Prime Minister herself has said she's open to reviewing this. It does seem strange to me that we haven't already done so, given Malta and Taiwan's lead. We know this practice still goes on in the UK, and it is something that is putting vulnerable lives at risk, as Andrew has pointed out. So please do vote for this if you feel led.
A point of order, Mr. Freeman. That's a motion for closure on item 58. It's not usual that we do that without any speeches, but I get a sense that we've aired matters quite thoroughly this afternoon, Synod, and so that would... No? Well, we'll put it to the vote. Oh, the Archbishop, sorry. After which I may be interested in Mr. Freeman again.
Members of Synod and Chair, only the Holy Spirit converts. The suggestion that somebody should use some technique to convert another and then continue healing, I'm sure this is theologically unsound. So the sooner the practice, so-called conversion therapy, was banned, I can sleep at night. So let's encourage the government to do it.
Thank you, Archbishop. Mr. Freeman? For the reasons adduced earlier, that would have my approval, but Synod, it's up to you. Those in favour of motion for closure? Thank you. Those against? That is clearly carried. Item 58 is now closed, and we come to vote on it. A point of order. Are there 25 members of Synod standing? There are. Therefore, we will indeed have a vote by houses. Mr. Registrar.
The division will begin 2 minutes after the bell has ceased ringing.
Synod, this is a counted vote by houses on item 58. Those in favour, 1. Those against, 2. Those abstaining, 3. Off you go.
The voting period is now open. Will end in 1 minute. Fifteen seconds. The voting period has ended.
Thank you. They're voted in the House of Bishops in favour 28, against 2, with 5 abstentions. Clergy 121 in favour, 34 against, 16 abstentions. Laity 120 in favour, 52 against, 18 abstentions. The amendment has been carried in all 3 houses. That brings us back, believe it or not, to debate on the main motion. But I do wonder, Mr. Freeman. I can't hear you, but it has my approval. Does it have the approval of Synod? Those in favour, please show. Those against, please show. OK, that is clearly carried, so debate is closed on item 12 as amended by 55 and 58. It's now for Ms Ozanne to reply to debate at a maximum of 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure Synod will understand that I can't reply to everybody, but thank you for all your speeches and for the tone of this debate, which I think has been a model for others. I had yesterday a letter passed to me from a 90-year-old priest who has told me that I can share. I won't read you the whole letter. He's a homosexual celibate priest who has been through every form of therapy there is. It's a horrific story. Electric shocks treatments, lithium treatments. I'll let you read his book when it comes out, but he ends with this. I hope with all my heart that your private member's motion asking the Synod that such treatment is unethical and harmful as it does not work will now be accepted. May God support you in all your endeavours to bring about an end once and for all to the Church's homophobia in all its forms, which have throughout the ages caused so much misery and suffering to countless thousands of people who were made in the image of God. Please, for this gentleman and countless others, will you give this motion a full support? Thank you.
We now then move to a vote on the substantive motion as amended. A point of order, sir. You may indeed. If 25 members are standing, we shall have another vote by houses. We shall have another vote by houses. Mr. Registrar.
I'm about to ring the bell. The division will begin 2 minutes after the bell ceases.
Synod. This is a counter vote by houses. Those in favour should press 1. Those against should press 2. Those who wish to record an abstention should press 3.
The voting period is open for 1 minute. 15 seconds. The end.
While the count is being transcribed, just a reminder again, Synod, that we do receive the results of the vote in silence. Reminder that once this debate is over, of course, there is worship taking place imminently here in the hall, so please do stay for that. And can I just thank you for the way in which this debate has been conducted. It's been quite a complex one, and I'm very, very grateful for all the way in which members have spoken and the helpful procedural motions that have enabled us to get through our business in just a quarter of an hour longer than I had hoped. Synod. They're voted in the House of Bishops in favour 36, against 1, with no recorded abstentions. In the House of Clergy in favour 135, 25 against, 13 abstentions. In the House of Laity 127 in favour, 48 against, 13 abstentions. The motion was carried in all three houses. This ends this item of business. Please stay for worship.